Good morning, everybody. It's so good to be here. It is my first global forum for Prime, and I'm really delighted to see so many of you in this space. I have watched you from the sidelines, listening to the messages. I've heard some of the introductory remarks, so super delighted over the next couple of days of the conversations we'll be having. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to this special fireside chat at Prime Global Forum. I'm honored to be joined by someone who truly embodies what it means to lead with purpose, Chelsea Clinton. As Vice Chair of the Clinton Foundation and a global advocate for health equity, climate action, and education, she's long been a voice for intergenerational change and justice. At Prime, we spent the past 2 years undergoing a profound transformation. We have evolved from a quiet UN initiative to a vibrant global movement committed to embedding sustainability, ethics, and responsibility into how we teach and practice business. We have launched new global tools and communities of practice to help our signatory members translate the SDGs into classroom realities. We've doubled down on faculty training and curriculum innovation. We've grown our regional presence by strengthening the capacity of our chapters and introducing data-driven insights from our global sharing information on progress report system. Some of you know that as our SIP. We are proud of how our network has stepped up, not just in numbers, but in action. And perhaps most importantly, we have listened to the voices demanding more from us through roundtable discussions and listening tours. Students, educators, and communities around the world who know that responsible management isn't a luxury, it is a necessity, especially in today's world. I want to give sincere thanks to the Prime Secretariat for executing this work, to Dr. Omid Eskari for serving as a senior advisor over the last year, and most importantly, to all of you, our community, who have made this work come to life. So today we're inviting you into a conversation about leadership and the future of education. It is important and it is timely. And who better to have that conversation with than Chelsea Clinton? Chelsea is an advocate, storyteller, investor, mentor, teacher, and most importantly, she's a mom to her 3 kids. As Vice Chair of the Clinton Foundation, Chelsea works alongside the foundation's leadership and partners to improve global health and wellness, increase opportunity for girls and women, create economic opportunity and growth, and inspire emerging leaders across the United States and the world. A longtime public health advocate, Chelsea also serves as a vice chair of the Clinton Health Access Initiative and uses her platform to increase awareness around such issues as vaccine hesitancy, childhood obesity, and health equity. In addition to her foundation work, Chelsea is the co-founder of Metrodora Ventures. She teaches at Columbia University's Mailman School of Public Health and has written several books for young adults and readers, including the #1 New York Times bestseller, She Persisted. Chelsea holds a Bachelor of Arts from Stanford, a Master of Public Health from Columbia School of Public Health, and both a Master of Philosophy and a Doctorate in International Relations from Oxford University. Chelsea, you are welcome. It is an honor to have you with us. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we will get started.
But my shoe got stuck. So I'm just going to leave it awkwardly. I don't have any other way to move forward, quite literally, than taking off my shoe. I'm sure there's a metaphor in there somewhere. The one-shoed woman. Oh, gosh. Oh, thank you. Well, thank you. And now you won't remember a single thing I say, but you'll remember that I briefly lost my shoe.
Was so delighted to have you, shoes fixed, We're ready to go. Okay, so we will start more on a personal basis. Take a step
I mean, I've
back.
already taken off a shoe.
You've
Chichi,
taken off a shoe.
where are we
I mean,
going from
everybody's
here?
comfortable now, so they're super delighted now. Um, so let's start. Let's take a step back and let's go more personal. You wear many hats. You are an advocate, a mum, a teacher, an investor, but academia, the space between learning and action. Could you reflect on how the academic world has shaped your thinking on leadership?
Well, Chichi, thank you to you and everyone here and the kind of Prime community for welcoming me so warmly and also with such unexpected compassion for my earlier stumble. I have always been curious. I've always, thankfully, had parents and teachers who have supported my curiosity. I thankfully also have always had kind of parents, grandparents, and teachers who uh, ensured that I understood that part of kind of curiosity is also always being in the kind of posture of not only kind of learning but listening to learn. So yes, asking questions and then kind of listening to the answers and kind of following kind of the conversations or my research kind of into yes, disciplined directions and also unexpected ones. I am a mom of three kids. They're 10, 8, and 5. And certainly, um, while I might be kind of more proximate to my PhD experience and have enormous kind of gratitude to my doctoral supervisor from whom I learned so much and still continue to thankfully count her as a mentor, I'm deeply mindful of how important our early childhood educators are. And I'm so thankful that my children went to, yes, kind of warm and inviting preschools where they were encouraged to learn how to share and kind of play well together, but also to ask questions and to feel comfortable in their curiosities and to respect their friends, their playmates' curiosities as well. Kind of that no one set of questions and no one questioner kind of had any more claim to time than the other. And so really, Chichi, when you asked that question, I was thinking, yes, I'm so thankful I took statistics at Stanford and all of these kind of classroom experiences that were so powerful. But I'm really thankful to the early childhood educators that I had in my life who taught me about, yes, the continents, but also the life cycle of the cicadas, because that's what we were really interested in back in, 1983 or 84. And how grateful I am that my children have had similar experiences and how much I wish that that were true for every child, and it isn't, including, not here in the United States.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. So we will, staying on the topic of leadership and learning. You have worked across sectors. Um, what is your take on the most important quality that leaders should have today that perhaps we haven't emphasized or wasn't emphasized about 10 years ago in the world that we live in today?
I think a lot, particularly these days, about the importance of, yes, curiosity. I mean, if you asked my dad this question, he would say that kind of being curious is what enabled him to successfully run to be kind of the attorney general of our home state and then governor and then president, because he was always curious about both issues and people, wanting to understand kind of all the kind of wonky internecine dimensions of kind of different policies and what the data were around kind of what policy had worked in still a largely kind of rural state, as one example, wherever that policy may have been enacted in the world, and to figure out, could that work in Arkansas? And also curious about people, wanting to understand kind of people's lives and their hopes and their dreams. And my father, I think, intuitively always believed in localization, because being from a relatively poor, largely agrarian state that had multiple different crops, even across different county lines, you had to really understand kind of local communities and always be in the posture of listening and learning from what people lived in those communities would say they needed, whether it related to kind of agrarian financing or education. Um, I I would echo that strongly. I also think what we don't talk about enough, Chichi, to your question, is how important it is to have humility and confidence together. yes, the confidence that you have a purpose, that you kind of believe that you're uniquely positioned because of that sense of purpose, and whatever your experience and expertise that you've gained up to that point positions you well to lead, whether in kind of education or any arena, but also the humility to understand that none of us know everything. And none of us have had the experiences of anyone else. And so I think we don't often emphasize enough the importance of the linkage between curiosity and humility, I think. And I find that to be acutely true at this moment.
No, thank you for that. And reflecting on what you have just said, what also strikes me is in your response is people at the center of it. Something about humanity as well. You know, sort of connecting with people, bringing the humility and confidence, and bringing confidence with humility, but also the humanity aspect of leadership.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Chichi, you and I were talking backstage about how you've only been here for a few months
Have
in
been.
New York. We're very happy to have you, even on our unseasonably kind of muggy and cold June day. It is almost summer.
I keep hearing that.
Yes, I know, I know. We will get there, and then you will wish for the
I've heard that too.
kind of muggy days of early June. And would imagine that you too in your different experiences also have reflections on not only leadership but the importance of learning. I mean, I think that's clearly what's enabled you to kind of be so successful in so many different organizations, but also geographies.
No, no, absolutely. I think we were just talking about how part of humility is also exposing yourself to learning, sort of understanding the learning doesn't have to be formal, but actually you can learn from the most interesting of places. And in terms of sort of some of my experiences, I think COVID-19 was a very important time for the world, actually, where you had leaders who showed a lot of humility to learn because they were dealing with something that we hadn't confronted before. And I think it comes across many places. So thank you for that. Okay, we're going to switch now to the education sector. Um, More and more, we are finding that our education sector is under pressure. There are those who argue that we need to do more to develop effective leaders for tomorrow who can deal with the challenges of today. In your perspective, why do you think that the education still matters in how we do education at the moment?
Well, I think every person in this room probably has an emphatic answer to that question as to why kind of education has mattered so much to each of us, and how either in main or part it led to us kind of being in this room here together today. Certainly here in the United States, we have a long, albeit imperfect, history of the importance of kind of public education. And certainly in this moment in time, not to have kind of too much of a myopic focus on the United States, and yet to do exactly that briefly, we have, conversations, deliberations happening in Washington right now as to whether or not we actually need a Department of Education. Should that be a kind of federal, public, national priority, for the United States? And I certainly believe yes. I think if anything, we need to be investing more in education, more in kind of ensuring that early childhood education is of, yes, always increasing caliber and quality, but also universality, which it's currently not, even here in New York State, and certainly not, across the country. And so this is a very live debate, and an existential one here in the United States. And also kind of intersecting with that are all of the kind of rather extreme both hopes and fears around artificial intelligence. Will AI enable every child to have deeply personal education? Will AI enable, classrooms that do have 25, 27 students to be able to have that experience so the teachers can actually spend more time kind of teaching the social emotional skills that we know are also so important as we kind of think of education as, yes, kind of fueling kind of curiosity, but also building citizens and citizenship. Um, I certainly hope that AI doesn't act as a further force of inequity and inequality. I hope that having human teachers doesn't become like the luxury for the wealthy. I think that would be a devastating kind of conclusion to the, again, extreme hope and fears that currently exist around AI. If AI can help truly meet every child kind of where they are at age appropriate levels with kind of the answers to curiosity and to be an accelerant for kind of learning and discovery, I think that's wonderful. If we somehow kind of inadvertently or purposefully kind of hurtle toward a dynamic where we displace kind of the human-centered element, Chichi, which is how you kind of first framed your question, I think that that will hasten kind of the arrival of a future that ultimately will not be sustainable or healthy or equitable for any of us. So, I think there are so many questions right now that we're grappling with, and I certainly hope that in this country we decide to still have a federal Department of Education with real experts and expertise within it, with people of enormous kind of compassion and purpose to support kind of the belief and the premise, and ultimately I believe what has helped make America great is investing in our public education system over time, and so that we make it more fit for purpose for the future, whatever that may mean, and not kind of dismantle it in a way that ultimately won't serve anyone.
No, thank you. Thank you very much for that. And I think you've touched on a few points in the next question that I would like to ask. As you have noted, and as we are seeing, the academic institution is under increasing pressure. It's under financial pressure, political pressure, and ideological pressure. It may seem as if it's localized to the United States, but actually it's a global phenomenon, and we're witnessing it. Um, how do you think that we should protect and safeguard the space to ensure that we have this space for public inquiry, for learning as well, you know, and you could talk about some of the things that the Clinton initiative is doing, the Clinton Global Initiative is doing to strengthen partnerships that can help safeguard and protect the spaces for academia to thrive, because ultimately, as we agree, we do still need that space.
So I'm going to answer your question, Chichi, in sort of two different ways. One, I'll start kind of on a personal note because that's where you kind of ushered in this conversation earlier, again, after I awkwardly lost my shoe. And then I went to public school in Arkansas in the 1980s and the early 1990s. And I had fantastic teachers all the way through my experience of actually being a kindergartner in a high school, because the Little Rock School District had grown so quickly that the only places that had space kind of for the youngest kids were the high school. So I went to kindergarten at Hall High School. I then kind of was zoned for one school for first grade, and then went to a different school for second grade, and then went to what we called then junior high school for seventh grade. So I went to many different schools as part of the kind of Little Rock public school system, and they all had excellent teachers. They also had a real sense of kind of civic purpose and community. And by that, I mean, I didn't just learn about um, Arkansas history or American history. I didn't just learn, how to spell encyclopedia. I didn't just learn kind of how to work on my cursive penmanship, although I, of course, did learn all of those things. I also had hearing and vision tests. We had the local dentists come in and teach us about oral hygiene. We had a local nurse come in and talk to us about nutrition. I had age appropriate sexual and reproductive health classes as part of my life science curriculum in seventh and eighth grades. If I were a public school student in Arkansas today, none of that would be true. And oh, by the way, I also could have gotten my vaccinations in school if I weren't already receiving them at my pediatrician's office. And again, because none of that would be true today, we're not investing in schools, not only kind of their educational purpose, but their civic and their community purpose. Right? It very much was the place where we had like monthly PTA meetings, and generally, admittedly, it was my mom would go and I would go, but all the kids would be there and all the families would be there, and we all knew each other. I knew not only my friends' parents, I knew like the older kids and their parents, and we very much felt like we were part of a community. And I think we do have to decide what purpose do we want our schools to serve. And if we really want our schools to help kind of build not only, kids who are going to dream of being, one of my kids wants to be a marine biologist, one of them wants to be a mathematician, and one of them admittedly wants to be a rock star. And if we want to help every child be able to have and fashion their own dreams and to understand the importance of, yes, like as I say to my 5-year-old, like rock stars need to learn how to read and write. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to like make your own music. Like you need to go to school to learn about history so that you then have the context for how other musicians came out of different places and spaces with their lives and how that inspired whatever song you may really love. And right now we're super obsessed with everything kind of Beethoven and Bob Marley. And I'm like, that could be an amazing combination in your brain, but you got to learn about this places and like the where they grew up and how they became who they are. So you got to go to school because that's history. I can really always make a case for education. But if we also want to our schools to be what has certainly been like a huge part of American history, to be places where we help build citizens and citizenship, and to understand that being a citizen isn't just voting on an election day. It's how we show up for our communities, our cities, our state, and our country every day. I think we have to have a different conceptualization again, and a different set of investments that we make kind of civically and also psychologically, like into schools. And certainly at the Clinton Foundation, one of the ways that we engage with education is, yes, kind of through our Clinton Global Initiative platform, where we have kind of different kind of people who come from around the world to share ideas and commitments that they're each making on education, very similar to sort of the kind of zeitgeist that I grew up around in Arkansas, with how my parents were constantly inviting kind of people from other states or other countries to come to Arkansas to share kind of what they were doing and kind of what we could learn from what others were doing. But we also deeply believe in listening and learning from young people. I think that we can't just sort of give young people a seat at the proverbial table. If we're talking about issues that really affect them, we have to, yes, of course, do that, but include them in kind of all the conversations. And so we have a Clinton Global Initiative University program where certainly we kind of listen to young people by definition, and we kind of have virtual town halls where we're kind of always soliciting kind of from young people, not only what they think about education, but what they also think about public health or the environment or human rights or other issues that we care about. And we know that young people do too.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for that. And you've just reminded us about the Youth Talk consultation that was done last year with the Prime team, where your words are spot on. Young people are saying that it's not just about teaching us about a complex world. It's about allowing us to be part of the lived realities. So making sure that what you teach us is reflective of the realities. And I think that touches to some of the things that you've said, and about the grounding as well, how we perceive education in all its totality, not necessarily in the transactional, you speak to me, I speak to you, I submit stuff to you, but actually what opportunities do we create to collectively learn and involve everybody in that process?
One of the things that I don't think I really understood until I was kind of at the end of my PhD process was that if I think done well, is that doctoral programs are also apprenticeship programs effectively, and I don't think I really understood that until I was kind of at the end, when I'd realized how much I actually had been taught, not only about a research program, but also how to then support other students in the future, kind of in their architecture and pursuit of kind of whatever research question or questions might kind of be palpitating inside them, and certainly the way that I had felt about mine. And I do wish that we didn't have kind of so many silos in education of kind of what we think of as having an apprenticeship model or not, because I think when education is done really well, at least in higher education, it's often done really kind of with that, I'm teaching you and I'm also teaching you how to teach mentality, that I think is quite powerful.
It is. It is. No, thank you for that. And we're going to move a little bit to broaden the conversation. You are a strong advocate for centering women and girls in development. So not just through a gender lens, not just through an add-on, not just through, let's just have it there, but actually issues of gender equality, women empowerment, opportunities for young women to thrive as a bigger part of systems thinking, which really is the only way that, we can thrive. Could you elaborate more on that and how we can expand some of those across our systems?
Well, certainly I would not be so presumptuous to say kind of what we do or how we think of it is necessarily kind of how anyone should think of it, except to say that I do think it's important that if if we care about kind of gender and gender equity, that we don't sort of place gender like in a corner, right? That I do believe strongly that kind of, and we at least attempt to do this, that kind of the kind of focus on gender and the attention to gender, has to be integrated into everything, whether we're talking about health or economic development or sustainability, that kind of gender, has to be kind of fully integrated kind of from the beginning. And I think too, Gigi, that one of the um, realities of the moment is that there are people who think we sort of have checked that box. Like, oh, we've spent so much time talking about it. It's like time to talk about something else. I mean, I truly had someone say to me once, like, I was talking to them in early January, like, I wish you'd come to talk to me last year. I was really focused on women last year. And I was like, what? And
Okay.
then and then it was one of those moments too where I was
Okay.
like, wow, if that's what you said, like, what are you thinking? Like, what else is in your brain that
Yeah.
you're not saying? And I was like, it's only like January 7th or whatever day it was. He's like, yeah, I know that was like really the focus last year. So I share that because I think that is not omnipresent, but I think that's a substantial and I see lots of heads nodding, a substantial challenge of the moment of helping kind of people understand that, yes, we have made progress. And also, we are so far away from anything that I would count as success. We cannot mistake progress for success when we think about ensuring that women and girls have equal opportunities and equal protections, kind of an equal chance to grow up and, again, like, be a rock star or a marine biologist. And so I think that we just have to be candid about that, Gigi. And I think about this sometimes just in the kind of starkest terms where I try to help kind of my fellow Americans understand not mistaking progress for success, and that child marriage is still legal in 35 states. A decade ago it was legal everywhere, so you're like, yay, progress. It's illegal in 15 states. It's still legal in 35. And so I find that sometimes the stark statistics like that really help. Or like, women are CEOs at like 12% of Fortune 500 companies. Like 10 years ago, it was 10%. So either you can think, wow, we've made 20% progress, or we're still at 12%. Like, I do find that often, yes, like stories are more compelling than statistics. But I think in this conversation, statistics are actually really important because they not only illuminate, but I think really elucidate how important it is to, yes, of course, like celebrate progress and understand what has worked, whether in fields of education or elsewhere, but to not mistake progress for success.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a very pertinent point on that. Um, we will go a little bit towards technology and innovation. In today's day, most of the time when you hear about innovation, the focus is on technology or new business models. But we also know that we can have innovation in social spaces. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I completely agree. I completely agree that innovation should not be synonymous with invention, or technology. While of course sometimes innovation includes both. And just another moment of levity. I once was also trying to help someone raise funds to expand their midwifery network, and I went to talk to someone I thought might be interested, and he truly said to me, like, "Tell me about this innovation of midwifery," and I was like, "Great." Thinking in my head, like, midwifery is probably the oldest profession, right? Not prostitution, which is how the saying goes, but like, where did we all come from? like thank a midwife, many, many eons ago. And yet I did say, you know what, you're right. Like we haven't really had midwifery generally as part of kind of the care continuum as we've thought of kind of obstetrics here in the United States. So yes, like in this instance, it is. And so I share that because I think, Chichi, you make such an important point, and that I think we always, again, back to the kind of posture of being curious and willing and wanting to kind of learn, have to, I think, better understand kind of more quickly, particularly now, kind of what has worked anywhere. Not that it could work everywhere, but just like what has worked anywhere. And to not have, I think, a false sense of pride that we then have to kind of come up with something else. I mean, there's a reason why we have, kind of the mantra of like, don't reinvent the wheel. But a lot of people tried to reinvent the wheel,
Yeah.
right?
And I think that's really important that even in most unlikely of places, there is innovation that occurs, especially in the complex world that we live in today. We're almost nearing the end of our conversation, which has been very interesting. So I'm going to ask you one final question. And a lot of what you have said has touched upon the theme of why we're here today, this community's shared sense of purpose in today's complex world. And it's so wonderful to hear you talk about linking all aspects of your life with also the formal aspects of your life, how all of them through the learning and actions inspire what you do on a regular basis. And so as we both exit the stage, I would like to give you a chance to, if there was one thing, one message that you could leave with us as we deliberate over the next 2 days, as we think through how we ensure that the work that we do with our universities, our students, how we think through sustainability in all its dimensions, what kind of leaders we want to develop for tomorrow's world. What is that message? And no pressure.
Oh, goodness.
You've already started on a very chill note, so no
No, no,
pressure.
no. I mean, I just hope I get off the stage with both shoes
Well,
on.
I am.
No, I know I said this earlier, but I so deeply believe it. I think that we collectively have to do a better job of helping young people, including kids, feel like they're having not only kind of, again, the formal education, and whether it's also formal or in kind of informal ways, kind of the expectation of being a citizen. Because I think right now we have a lot of people who don't feel like they are civically engaged, or the number of times that I hear people like say something after an election here in the United States of like, oh gosh, I'm so thankful I don't have to care about politics again for like another 2 or 4 years. I'm like, what do you think is going to happen in those 2 or 4 years? Like, do you care about the air we breathe or like the water we drink? Do you care about the schools that your children go to? Do you care about whether or not people have health care? Do you care about whether or not people are being paid a living wage? Like, I bet you care about these things, like also on November, whatever, 7th and not just November 6th. But I think we really have to help people understand how whatever it is they're in school to study is also connected to the larger world. You're in school to be an astrophysicist? Awesome. Like, do you care about NASA? You're in school to be a rock star? Great. Do you care about like public education that's teaching like kids music? Like, how I'm so grateful that in my son's New York City public school that they have music class. Right? Like it all matters and we're all connected. And I think that can't just be something on a Hallmark card. I think it's something we really have to help. Yes, parents and adults understand, but kids and young people really understand too, so that they can better advocate for the world that they want to live in, even before they're old enough to vote, and certainly once they are.
No, thank you very much. It all matters. Learning must take into account the world that we exist in. Chelsea, thank you so much for your time. Round of applause
Chichi,
for her.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.